Chapter 2. Several months later. "Welcome home," cracks a voice nastily. The words seared into Eric's mind as he's pulled from the back of the rundown van and carried to the front door of the 3-story asylum. The words etched above the door are a warning to all who enter. Black paint over the archway reads, "No one leaves and no one will." The building stands looming over him, and for that moment, Eric feels like a lost child. Even in the slums of the dark city, Orgrimdeare, he hadn't felt this sense of hopelessness. The structure is out in the middle of nowhere with no sign of life for many miles. The rumors of this sanitarium scare even the most hardened men. From mutilation to demonic experimentation, once you cross through the doors, there's no escape. Eric struggles to feel his arms through the straitjacket. He's had it on for what seems like an eternity. One of the orderlies punches Eric in the gut. "Stop squirming, you shit for brains." The other aide laughs at the remark as Eric staggers from the blow. His breathing grows difficult from the ball gag in his mouth. He snorts, fighting for every ounce of air. The men climb the stairs leading up to the rust-coated doors. Eric takes one last glance at the desolate world, noticing the barbed wire fence surrounding the perimeter. A gust of wind touches his skin. He takes in every last sensation from the humid breeze, knowing that it is his last bit of freedom. No one ever makes it out of the sanitarium. Upon reaching the door, the orderly on the left grabs the knob and turns it. The smell of sweat and dampness crawls inside Eric's nostrils as the door opens. Before him is a small area that is very reminiscent of a waiting room from a time long ago. To his left sit 3 chairs murdered by time, 2 of which are devoid of all color, just dark pieces of rotting furniture. On the walls are paintings that have lost any emotion or plot. At one point, these pictures depicted a story the artist wanted to convey. Maybe even some raw emotion. Now just a bleached smear of color with a frame. The floor creaks and moans with each step the men take to the counter. It is snug to the right side of the room, just before the door into the sanitarium. Behind it sits a plump woman feverishly working on her nails. Her fiery red hair is messily put into a bun. Her skin is pale in color, standing out against her dark brown shirt. Once at the counter, the 2 orderlies let go of Eric. He drops to the floor as exhaustion conquers his body. The man on the right tips his cap to the woman, who is still too occupied with her nails to make eye contact. "Afternoon. Amanda, I hope." "Cut the shit, Jim. I'm not in the mood." He nods, then puts his cap back on. Jim proceeds to the task at hand. He signs the clipboard on the counter, then goes into the details of their delivery. "I got a prisoner transport from Orgrimdeare. His name is Eric Sankim. He was caught stealing dark root from Quadrant 3. He hands the paperwork over to Amanda. "Why would anyone steal that?" she asks with a smug, yet indifferent tone. Her assignment was simple. Spend 18 months at the sanitarium, then move back to Orgrimdeare. Amanda would then finish out her contract with Quantum Core in Quadrant 2. It's been almost 4 years with no word on a transfer. Her demeanor is quite jaded, to say the least. "Dunno," Jim answers. "He won't say either. They usually just cut off a thief's hand at the Coliseum during intermission." Eric's laying there asking himself that exact question. Well, he's been asking himself that since long before Jim and his partner Gary picked him up at the train station in Midland. The City of Steam was quite the sight for Eric indeed. He's been a child of the Dark City his entire life. Never has he stepped outside its walled confines. The sprawling dark metropolis is home to millions of citizens, all fighting for some semblance of a normal life. The towering walls around Orgrimdeare are as much a defense as they are a prison. The Sanitarium is many miles southwest of the Dark City. The trip has been quite the ordeal for the young thief. Eric's been replaying the entire event in his mind. Why in the fuck did you take that job? Eric asked himself this question over and over. Everything fell too neatly into place, from the layout of the job Croker provided to how conveniently Quadrant 3's police showed up. It all unfolded too perfectly. Why would Croker do this? I never faltered on a job, Eric ponders while squirming through the straitjacket. Gary looks down as Eric flounders. He motions his muddy boot toward Eric like he's about to strike. Eric stops moving, slouching his shoulders back into a sulk. His next inquiry into his predicament moves to the charade of his arrest and transport to the sanitarium. The typical punishment for a thief in the walled city was light compared to other punishments. All criminals paid their blood debt inside the Colosseum, a massive stadium erected in a time long past that was used for men and women in civil sportsmanship. Now it's home to savage spectacles of death, men and women squaring off for fame and power, purely to keep Orgrimdeare's citizens happy and complacent. Thieves would lose a hand during intermission. It was an interactive affair. The thieves would line up while children chose the order. One and done. Cauterize the wound and send me on my way, Eric thinks. But they didn't. Eric's trial was swift. A judge was called in that night at the precinct for sentencing. He was then sent to the train station, bound and gagged like a serial killer, like he just assassinated the great king of Orgrimdeare himself, Claudius Draconis. Eric's internal musings halt as Jim answers Amanda. Word is Dr. Armistead is looking for males that have blonde hair and hazel eyes. Just so happens this piece of swine shit fits the bill. Well, Eric got his answer. He never thought his facial features would land him in the sanitarium. He lay on the ground motionless, listening for any other information he can gather. He takes quick glances around in hopes of finding a way out if an opportunity would ever arise. Amanda and the men exchange several more pleasantries before continuing to their next destination. Eric listens as she goes into detail about the shortage of filtered water at the sanitarium. They have us on water rations again. My hair is oily and nasty, and my skin is starting to break out, Amanda gripes as she looks over Eric's transport papers. Dr. Armistead issued a contract over to Midland for a tinker. They were supposed to be here yesterday. A herd of mutants has been sighted east of here, Gary injects, wiping the stream of sweat from his face. Shit, I thought those things were already dealt with. You think they got to the tinker? Jim asking Gary and Amanda. If they did, Midland better send out another one. This time bring a damn squad of blade arms with them. I'm really getting tired of this shithole, Amanda whining, her voice cracking in anger. She turns to a series of cabinets behind her. Opening the drawer marked with a white stamped S, the plump receptionist files Eric's paperwork. She turns back to Jim and Gary with a defeated expression. A part of her hair from the haphazardly done bun falls across her face as Jim speaks. Still no transfer papers from Quantum Core? Nope. And the worst part is I'm not even being paid for this contract. It was only an internship. Sure, I get a stipend at the end, but when the hell is that? Amanda throws her arms. I stink. I'm hungry. All we get now are these damn turd-looking jelly rations. I'm done. I'm just fucking done. I'm sorry to hear that. Cut the half-ass sympathy, Jim. I need some real food. The supplies from the Merchants Guild are over a month past due. With recent events, do you think the Merchants Guild is holding out on supplying the Sanitarium? Gary asks. What are you getting at? Jim to Gary with his own question. Both Amanda and Jim keep their eyes locked on Gary. He stammers from their gaze. You know who Dr. Armistead has locked in cell 68. You think the Merchants Guild has any clue? Jim lets out a snide laugh. No way in hell. She hadn't been down here that long. Plus, all the Wastelanders that were with her were gunned down, or they're here, rotting in a cell right next to her. But if they do know, it won't be good for the dragon, Amanda chimes in. Her demeanor becomes ominous. We could have an all-out war. Now you're both acting like scared fucking cubs. Neither the Wastelanders nor the Merchants Guild stands a chance against the might of the Dark City. It'd be a scuffle at best. Plus, Claudius has the backing of the Lycans. This is a no-fucking-brainer. It will end in a complete massacre. Jim finishes with a hearty laugh, thinking about those backwater Wastelanders getting what they deserve. Yeah, haha, Amanda and Gary say, followed by timid laughter. Their theories allude to the rocky alliance between Orgrimdeare, the Wastelanders, and the Merchants Guild. An alliance was formed about 30 or so years ago during the Lycan War, the conflict between humans and werewolves. Ultimately, the Lycans were defeated and now follow Claudius Draconis, the current ruler of the Dark City. He prefers to be called by his self-appointed title, the Dragon. Once the paperwork is finalized, the orderlies say their farewells to Amanda and head to the wooden door on their left with Eric in tow. As they enter the room, Eric is quite impressed by how clean it is, or at least how clean it looks. The aroma in the air is a mixture of vinegar and bleach. They walk about 10 yards and turn right down another hall. It is quite wide, with a freshly mopped floor. The walls are white. Each door is identical, grayish in color. Most of the doors they pass are closed. The select few that are open, Eric can tell, are living quarters for the employees. Each room matches, with a single cot with a table and chair. There is a man in one room enjoying a rolled cigarette, staring at the wall in what seems to be deep reflection or boredom. Another open room reveals several men and a woman sitting around a table playing a card game. The sights are about the same as they continue along the hallway for another 30 yards. The ceiling lights sporadically flicker as they move. Eric pictures the lights signaling to each other that another dead man is walking. They reach the end of the hallway and turn left, and as Eric guessed, it looks the exact same. The three advance along the lifeless yet sanitary hallway all the way to the other end and turn left again. This time, however, they are met by a fat man sitting at a table. Behind him is a set of metal bars from top to bottom. Eric can only surmise this is the start of the prison area. The plump guard sports a very lush mustache paired with thin brown hair with a horrible comb-over. The mustachio fellow wheezes with each breath he takes. His hands nestle on his round belly, holding a ration. As the three men approach the table, Mustachio bellows out to them, "State the prisoner's name." "Eric Sankim," Jim replies. "All right." Mustachio slowly and ever so carefully eases out of his seat, then creeps to the back room. He returns with a folded pair of clothes. Breathing heavily, he hands them to Jim. "Once he's in his cell, have him put these on. We will need his clothes and any belongings for recycling." Mustachio sinks back into his chair and thumbs through his clipboard. Put him in cell number 73. The orderlies nod, continuing through the bars toward the stairs. Due to the overdue shipment of supplies from the guild, there isn't sufficient power for the elevators. The sanitarium uses a combination of generators and solar panels. Oil and gasoline are very limited in supply, and are mainly used during the cold months when the sun barely breaks the horizon. As time passes and solar panels break, the elevators are used less frequently. Rumors have been circulating among the employees that the walled city commissioned a methane generator to be built near the sanitarium, which, to everyone's delight, will bring livestock. Usually, swine are used as the primary resource for the generator. Any kind of meat is better than the black jelly rations. Gary has often said it has the same consistency and odor of baby shit, molded into a rectangle. The jelly ration is the main staple at the sanitarium. The isolated building is so far from any major city that receiving fresh produce is impossible. The soil's lack of fertile nutrients keeps the idea of agriculture far from the employees' grasp. The closest city is Midland, which is still several hundreds of miles north. Many of the merchants traveling by foot to the sanitarium are either murdered by bandits or migrating mutants. Both are a far kinder death if they are ever stranded at night without light, when the demons are out seeking a host organism. This freedom to perform ungodly experiments away from prying eyes has also made the sanitarium an island. A treacherous island that no merchant wants to visit, increasing the cost of goods astronomically for Dr. Armistead and the walled city. The men pass through the bars behind Mustachio and head to the door in front of them, leading to a stairwell. They stop at the door. Gary grumbles to Eric, "You're gonna help us walk you up these stairs, Toad?" "If not," Jim interjects, "we're gonna start cutting off your fingers one by one, you get me?" Eric nods. Jim opens the door and the men ascend the staircase. The sanitarium has been around for many years. The initial reason for its erection is lost to the winds of time. The architect at the time thought it was a grand idea to build a 3-story building with an extra level in between. What these hidden levels were for, no one alive today could garner a guess. For Armistead and his orderlies, it is perfect for keeping some of their more immoral experiments a secret. Dr. Armistead's chief job at the sanitarium is in the more occult dealings, understanding how the planewalkers function in this reality and how the Dark City can harness this otherworldly power. Armistead took a more physical approach in his experiments, such as testing the limits of the human body during a possession, when a demon latches onto a host body, transferring its consciousness or soul from the astral plane to the physical. Of the other 2 lead physicians, Dr. Zinnick leads in the understanding of runic symbols on the human body and how they interact with the astral plane. Dr. Strand deals with the manipulation of herbs, primarily in the realm of psychosis and psychedelic manipulation with the astral plane. Jim, Gary, and Eric reach the platform between the 1st and 2nd level. Time has eroded the walls to almost paper-thin thickness. This allows Eric to fully hear and comprehend the orgy of awful sounds oozing from the wall's cracks. Cries for help, muddled by odd whizzing and whirring noises, sounds of a chainsaw or other bladed tool. The slicing of flesh, followed by screams of pain, was as plain as day. There was no denying it. No matter how hard Eric tried to push it from his mind, the torture in this place is real. So very real. They continue onward to the next level. Each step grows heavier. Eric's body is exhausted from the entire trip. He's been in these restraints since the orderlies picked him up at the train station in Midland. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. No one in the slums could afford a ticket to travel to Midland via train. Most citizens have to brave the desert damnum if they ever wanted to see the Southwest Territory. His mind drifts once again to the dark city, with its majestic, gloomy skyscrapers all the way down to the bustling city streets. The last grand city of the New World. Mankind, so long ago, nearly drove themselves to extinction. This is the last remnant of that ancient society. The outlying colonies and towns have found a way to exist without certain amenities from the past, taking lost relics and rotted contraptions and creating something new. Humanity found a way to pick up the shattered pieces, working to find meaning in the madness. Humans living side by side with the supernatural. The only solace for the denizens in Orgrimdeare, or their way to escape their dark reality, is the Colosseum. Admission is free to all, and it is packed every night. Though Eric rarely stepped foot inside the arena, he oftentimes would climb to the roof of an adjacent building and gaze down at the spectacle. He'd spend his nights smoking and watching the bloody battles play out through binoculars. The Colosseum is so massive and tightly packed with people that anyone from any part of the city can hear the roar of the crowd. The abrupt stop at the stairwell door brings Eric back to reality. An eternal life in an 8x8 cell. His only hope would be to hang himself before the experimentations begin. Jim grabs the doorknob and looks back at Eric with a grin. Showtime. The door opens. Eric's eyes widen in fright, his ears ringing in complete terror. All his decisions, both good and bad, have led him to this moment, this terrifying reality, and it's then his subconscious speaks up. With a sarcastic chuckle, Eric, my boy, you screwed up. You screwed up big time. A draft rushes maddeningly at the three men like a Mack truck, bringing with it a feeder of rotting flesh and feces. It crashes into Eric's face. The stench buckles his knees and he falls. Jim and Gary feel Eric go limp. Hold on, Toad, Jim sneers as he helps Eric to his feet. Don't worry, you'll get used to the smell, Gary crows with a loud snort. He does his best to block the putrid air from traveling down his throat. On the verge of passing out, Eric fights through the blurry haze to look at his surroundings. The prison is in an open area with cells lining the boundary. In the middle is a zone secured with wire fencing. The employees coined it the Pit. Very little light illuminates the cell block. The halogen bulbs flicker with an eerie, erratic dance. With each twinkle of the bulb, the pit reveals more of itself. Inside, 10 or so entities sluggishly move around the fence. Dark, hoarse groans creep out of their mouths. Eric cannot make out if they're human. The closest one to him is leaning against the fence, gradually swaying back and forth, moaning incoherent nonsense, the kind of sound someone makes when they've had too much whiskey. The moans are coupled with odd, wet, burping sounds, like the monstrosity is on the brink of puking. The monstrosity begins to push its face into the fence, deliberately dragging it across the perforated metal. Small chunks of flesh fall off in gelatinous clumps. Eric hears the plops of meaty skin hitting the floor, his stomach tied in knots. Jim and Gary quicken their pace down the dark hallway. About 40 paces, they round the first turn to the left. Cell number 73, right? Jim asks Gary with a heavy pant. Gary answers while fighting for air as well. No doubt a blend of being out of shape and the odor being so overpowering they want to take in as little air as possible. Yeah, should be the last cell on the right, Gary answers. The orderlies pause for a moment to catch their breath. Eric, coming back from the hazy fog caused by the stench, glances to the cell on his right. Nothing but darkness within. He senses something, however. A presence observing him through the blackness. The scent of decayed flesh rapes his nose again. The urge to vomit returns. Saliva builds in excess. Screams from the pit pierce his ears like daggers. The screams go on for what seems like an eternity, consuming his mind and shivering his very soul. It mellows into a loud whimper, then sobbing. The men take one big heave and pick the thief back up. A grotesque figure now stands at the bars to their right. "What the fuck?" Gary shouts, kicking the cell door. "Damn it, you old hag!" What stands before the men looks neither woman nor man. Her long, stranded hair covers the deep black sockets where eyes once sat. The mangled woman's skin is gray and wrinkly, so wrinkly that it appears the skin's melting right off. The old hag places her thin, skeletal fingers on the bars and smiles. One lonely black tooth protrudes from the bottom gum. The hag's voice squeaks as she speaks, tightening her grip on the bars. "He's coming for you. He's coiled and ready to strike." "Shut the fuck up, you sick hag!" Jim shouts, slamming his baton against the metal bars. She doesn't flinch. Just then, a roach crawls out of the hag's left eye socket. It moves over the hag's forehead, gradual-like, with its antennas surveying the landscape. "He's waiting for you, Jim." She chuckles while snatching the roach with her left hand. She shoves the insect into her mouth and chomps feverishly. "Fate finds you this day. The aura around you is dark and faded. Search for the solace your tainted heart yearns for." "Get back from the bars, or so help me God, I'll beat you to oblivion." Jim points the baton at the shriveled woman. The hag remains motionless, staring at Jim, almost as if she is looking through Jim's soul with her eyeless sockets. Fear turns to anger as he rears the baton back. The hag displays another toothless grin and slides her hands off the bars. Gary nudges his partner back. Infuriatingly, Jim spits at the hag's feet. She gives an ominous chuckle. The men see pieces of the roach stuck to her gums. Eric's eyes can't take any more. As his stomach dances again, vomit begins to ooze out the side of the gag. The taste is agonizing, which leads to more vomit. The orderlies pay no attention as they hasten to Eric's new home. The thief has no choice but to keep chewing back his own vomit. After several minutes of the tireless loop of vomiting, chewing, the three assemble at the cell door. Jim pulls out his trusty key ring. Quickly he thumbs through to a worn iron key and unlocks the cell door. Gary and Eric step back as Jim swings the door open. Eric peers into the nothingness of his new home as Gary removes the gag around his face. A sensation of freedom rushes through him. Eric inhales as much as his lungs will allow. The stench of the cell attacks his taste buds. It's a mixture of burnt flesh and rotten eggs, smothered in a soup of decomposed fish. Eric hurls the remaining vomit he choked down mere moments ago. The puke splatters across Jim's feet. "Oh, come on, man, I've just been issued these shoes." "Oh, quit your belly aching and help me get the straitjacket off him," Gary insists. Jim holds Eric while Gary loosens the straps of the frayed straitjacket, finally free of his restraints, only to be thrown into another. The two orderlies hurl Eric into the corner of the cell. He smacks into the concrete wall, then slides to the floor. Eric turns, sitting with his back to the corner, just in time to see Jim speak to the darkness in his cell. "Say hello to your new roommate." "Welcome home, Jim," the darkness replies. "I brought you a new friend. A thief from Orgrimdeare. Try not to kill him so quick, all right? Come on, man, let's go, Gary says. I don't like this cell open for long. Relax, he's chained to the wall, Jim replies confidently. Through all the haze and trauma Eric went through this past week, the one thing that remains vivid in his mind is the look on Jim's face. The look that washes across your face when you lose your footing from a ladder or see a speeding car barreling at you. The way your eyes open wider than you ever thought possible. Then time slows to a crawl as all 5 senses soak in every bit of detail, telling you, that you are about to die. Eric sees this expression paint across Jim's face that moment he saw the empty chain slide to his feet. That fucking hag was right, Jim thinks as he reaches for his baton. The figure dashes from the shadow, grabbing Jim by the neck, slamming him against the wall. He lifts the terrified orderly off his feet, snatching the baton from his hand. In one effortless motion, the prisoner flings the baton at Gary, impaling him in the chest. The force sends Gary backward, crashing into the fence. Blood bubbles from his mouth as he slides to the cold concrete. Jim, still in his star-gazed trance, peers into the eyes of his captor. Once blue, now milky white. What took you so long? I've been waiting here for too long, the prisoner growls, tightening his grip around the orderly's neck. He devilishly smiles at Jim, relishing the moment. Do you know how hard it is to sleep here with all the screams and torture going on? And don't get me started on the slop you feed us around here. Jim fights for air as his face darkens to a purple hue. Where is Armistead? The prisoner asks. Jim answers the best he can. 3rd floor. Good boy, the prisoner answers with a slight grin. He winks at Jim, right before snapping his neck. Letting go, Jim's dead body limply falls to the floor. Eric stares at his savior with shock. The man's tan skin stretches over his muscular frame. The man's hair is short and black, with a bushy dark goatee coating his chin. The prisoner's only article of clothing is faded denim jeans. Few wrinkles track across the chiseled face. For the world that left mankind behind, he looked out of place. The wanderer Rod is one step closer to finishing his contract. After leaving Port Town, Rod traveled north to finish a contract he had taken from his longtime friend and leader of the Merchants Guild, Talun Balazar. The contract was for Talun's younger brother, Tulum. Tulum lived a life of booze and whores, taking up odd jobs for the local gangs inside the walled city, primarily for the Three Fingers gang. The jobs for the Three Fingers usually consisted of kidnapping, with the occasional collecting of debt. More often than not, the person owing the Three Fingers gang had to pay with their organs. It was dirty work, but it paid well. Tulum, to his credit, was a very good enforcer for the gang. Unfortunately, the brains all went to Talun. He's definitely not playing with a full deck, Tulum's mother would often say. Tulum took on a loan from the gang that he couldn't pay back. Talun, being the compassionate big brother, paid the tab. He requested Tulum be returned to his care. The deal was struck, but Tulum never made it home. Months passed when Talun finally got word Tulum was transferred to the Sanitarium. He couldn't directly defy the Dark City. This would break the alliance and potentially incur Claudius' wrath on his people. So he commissioned a contract for Rod, in secret, to rescue his brother from the Sanitarium. Rod did find Tulum, but it was too late. He was already tortured to the point that only a small birthmark on the back of his neck identified him. It looked like a small sparrow. The next course of action was simple, morphing the original contract into a blood contract. Kill the man who killed Tulum. And that man was none other than Dr. Armistead. Something else changed the dynamic of the contract completely. The sight of Mother Gertrude being corralled with her remaining Wastelanders into the Sanitarium. Rod knew the stakes the second he saw her. "We're gonna burn this whole motherfucker to the ground," the dark voice calls out to Rod, deep within his subconscious. Rod's eyes, milky white with rage, revert back to a deep blue. He kneels down to Eric. "Can you walk?" Eric sits in a deep stupor, not knowing what to say. He just stares into Rod's eyes, mainly in complete awe of his transformation. For a very brief moment, Eric could swear Rod's voice and mannerisms were different when his eyes were white. His voice was deeper, with a slightly different accent. No, just shock and dehydration," Eric thinks, while shaking the feeling away. Rod taps Eric on the forehead. "Hello? Anyone home?" The frightened thief blinks several times, shaking his head one more time for good measure. Rod stands up and extends his hand out. Eric accepts the gesture and is assisted to his feet. He smiles at Eric and pats him on the shoulder. "Well, let's go." Eric nods his head. He watches as Rod moves to Jim and pilfers through his pockets. Once the treasure is secure, he turns back to Eric and dangles it. The keyring sparkles ever so bright in the dim hallway. Rod stands up and heads down the hall. The thief is still in a daze at the event that just played out before him. Not more than 30 minutes ago, he was looking down the barrel of eternal captivity, now only minutes away from freedom. Rod's voice interrupts Eric's thoughts from the hallway. "Hey, are you coming or not?" Eric moves from the cell and follows the half-naked man. He ironically muses to himself at Rod's appearance. "Going to be interesting how we get ourselves out of here with our current state of dress, or undress, as the case may be." The weary thief stops next to the prisoner, who is standing in front of the cell that holds the eyeless hag. Eric looks up at the cell number, wondering why he didn't see it earlier. The number read 68, the same number Amanda and the orderlies spoke of. "Who the hell is this ugly old woman, and why is she so damn important?" Eric whispers to himself with a curious expression. Rod skims through the keyring, trying different combinations. After several attempts, the cell door opens. The hag glides to the opening, almost as if floating on air. She smiles at Rod as he extends his hand. "Let out anyone you deem worthy." "Thank you, Hunter," the hag says with a soft tone, not the tone of the wicked witch from earlier. That dry, raspy voice she used with Jim and Gary. This time it is backed with compassion and sympathy toward the prisoner, a reply as if they are longtime friends. "We'll need a diversion," Rod insists to the blind hag. She nods, then wobbles to the other holding cells. Rod looks back at the thief and motions him to follow. The men make their way to the stairwell door. Rod stops to listen for any signs of life on the other side before cracking the door open. Peering in first to verify the coast is clear, then swinging it open, he sprints up the stairs while Eric heads down. The thief stops and turns, looking up the stairwell. "This will lead us to ground level. I can retrace the steps that will lead us to the reception area." "There's something I need to do first," Rod replies while continuing his pace. "Come on, man, there are no guards this way. It'll be a cakewalk for us. Well, for you, anyway," Eric implores. He pauses for a moment to reflect on his unintentional insult to himself. Eric looks up the staircase and quietly calls out, "Hey, are you still there?" He remains quiet, listening for an answer. "We're only heading deeper into the hornet's nest. Come on, man. Still no answer. Eric grimaces and bites his lip before reluctantly following. With extreme haste and noiseless effort, the two men race up the 2 flights of stairs. Coming to the next floor, Rod looks to Eric with a calm yet stern demeanor. Stay close to me and be quiet. This is the experimentation floor. May run into guards. Eric's voice raises slightly at the remark. No shit! That's what I was saying earlier! Rod ignores the comment and cracks the door open. Eric can feel his blood pressure rising, going to the thought of his half-naked partner having any luck taking on armored guards. For that brief instant, Eric wishes he kept going down. Rod peers through the crack of the door. Faint footsteps encroach. He quickly closes it back. Gripping the knob, Rod anticipates the door opening, at which point he will need to take care of him, her, or them as swiftly as possible. Rod puts his ear up to the door. The footsteps reach the door, then keep moving. He waits a couple of seconds, then opens the door. This hallway is identical in appearance to the first floor. White walls with a white floor, with scattered gray doors lining either side. Rod pursues the 2 orderlies down the hall. He creeps as quietly as he can, inching closer and closer. As he gets in arm's length of the orderlies, he starts to listen to their conversation. "Did you hear Dr. Armistead is about to experiment on Dr. Strand?" says the left orderly. "No, I didn't," replies the orderly on the right. "Yeah, I guess it's vindication for all the unsanctioned experiments Dr. Strand performed. Apparently, Marcus found skulls in his office. They were hidden in a safe behind a painting. He also found a head in a vat, and it was Dr. Zinnick. Part of the doctor's face had solidified and melted off the skull." The right man stops. Rod comes to a standstill, with Eric not far behind. Rod arches his back and tightens his leg muscles like a panther about to pounce on his prey. The other orderly responds as they continue walking. "Dear God," the orderly on the left continues. "The skulls were chiseled out to look like masks. That is some twisted shit. I guess I could understand if Dr. Strand was using some of the leftover carcasses, but to kill Dr. Zinnick, I mean, weren't they friends? Hell, that's what I thought. They always ate lunch together. Marcus did say they got into some heated debates the past couple of weeks. Did he say what it was over?" "No, Marcus said they were already arguing when they walked into the conference room." The orderlies reach the last door on the right before the corner. The orderly on the left opens the door and proceeds in. Rod snatches the second orderly and silently snaps his neck. As he falls to the floor, the shoeless stalker advances to the last orderly, who turns to investigate the loud thud, only to be greeted by a fist. The jab finds its mark on the orderly's nose. His nostrils burst and blood gushes. The orderly lets out a yelp of pain as Rod maneuvers behind to put him in an arm lock. The right amount of pressure is applied to quiet the orderly's screams. Rod whispers into his ear, "Where's the storage room?" Struggling to breathe, the pinned orderly responds in a throaty tone, It's around the corner, on the left side." "Thank you." A bit more pressure and the orderly passes out. He lays the unconscious man on the ground and notices Eric standing in the archway watching in amazement before waving him into the room. "Shut the door behind you." As Eric starts in through the doorway, something moves out of his peripheral vision. He spots an old man strolling around the corner with a mop and bucket. He's dressed in a faded blue jumpsuit. No doubt the janitor, Eric considers. The man is missing his left arm. In its place is a piece of metal with several pivot points that connect from the mop to a harness on his belt. The janitor looks down the hall and spots the thief, now standing like a deer in headlights. Eric shouts to Rod, "Come here!" He walks over to Eric, peering out the doorway. The dark-haired prisoner spots the janitor and puts his index finger over his lips. Without skipping a beat, the janitor takes his attention back to mopping the floor. The two men grab the dead orderly and drag him into the room, closing the door behind them. Rod stops for a moment and looks around. It's a small break room with several small tables scattered about, a counter nestled in the corner with 4 cabinets above. He turns to Eric, who is taking a moment to let everything soak in. "Help me find a blade." Eric zones back in and scans the room as well. Rod walks to the cabinets as Eric kneels next to the corpse and searches his pockets. To his surprise, there was a small knife in the front left. He raises it into the air so his partner can see. "Will this do?" He looks back at Eric's prize. Walking over, he grabs the knife and yanks it open. He runs his finger over the 4-inch blade. Dull, but it will do. He grips the blade's handle in his left hand and stabs his right palm. Rod makes an incision and drops the knife on the table next to him. He plunges his index and middle finger into the wound. Digging into the hole, he smiles back at Eric. "Here's hoping I don't get an infection." With his fingers grasping the prize, he pulls out a tiny, blood-soaked vial. Horrified, Eric gasps, "What the hell are you doing, man? For fuck's sakes!" "So you don't know what this is?" Rod raises the vial for Eric to get a better view. "Yeah, a vial of debt," Eric remarks, gazing at the incision on Rod's hand. The words were said, but it takes Eric a moment to fully comprehend what exactly was going on. When his brain finally catches up, Eric looks back at Rod. "This is a blood contract?" "It is now. The man I was sent to retrieve is dead, so now I have to collect the blood debt from the man that killed him. It just so happens to be Dr. Armistead." "Holy shit," Eric groans. He slaps his right hand over his face and lets out a deep sigh. "My luck keeps getting better and better. This place is heavily guarded, going to take a miracle to get to him. I mean, shit, might as well just burn the whole compound down. It'd be easier." "I like this kid. He's got the right attitude," the dark voice in Rod's mind says with a rigid laugh. Rod pushes the vial into his left jean pocket. From deformed mutant to a roach-eating hag to a half-dressed man pulling vials out of his body, Eric is pretty much not surprised about anything by this point. The prisoner turns to the cabinet in the corner of the break room. Pulling open the doors, he finds a spool of gauze and wraps it around the right palm several times, ending the wrap about 4 inches from the wrist. He tears the gauze and tucks the end into itself. Grabbing the knife, Rod slides it into his right pocket. The men head back to the door. Opening it, Rod scans the halls, then moves to the corner. He peeks out, making sure all is clear. Rod heads back to the storage room door with Eric following behind. The thief looks back and spots the janitor down the hall, still minding his own business, tending to the floor without any care in the world, probably just grateful to have a warm place to sleep at night. Rod opens the storage room door. The room is stacked to the ceiling with various bins. Each container displays a number that coincides with the prison cell. There are 5 rows of storage containers. Each row has a sign with a range of numbers. The prisoner finds the row that ranges from 65 to 90. He hurries to the aisle, looking for a box with 73 on it. Rod finds it. He quickly pulls the drawer. A smile grows across his face as he pulls out his faded brown boots. Tucked inside are his gray socks. With haste, he slips the socks on. Setting the boots on the ground, he slides each foot inside, then kneeling down to secure each strap into the proper buckle. Eric keeps the door slightly open, spying for anyone coming down the hall. Rod stands up, then pulls his white cotton t-shirt out of the container. He throws it over his head, pulling it over his well-defined yet scarred body. Without warning, a siren erupts from the hallway. Eric looks over at his companion, walking to his position. I didn't do anything." Sounds of doors opening with hurried footsteps fill the hallway. Rod closes the doors and waits, listening to the chaos that is mere inches from them. He looks at Eric, then winks with a sly grin. The diversion. Rod gives it a couple more seconds before cracking the door open. He peeps through the well-lit crack. The employees of the sanitarium are rushing toward the stairwell. He glances left and immediately closes the door. "What's going on?" Eric asks. "Guards," Rod answers. Guards in full riot gear race to secure the third level. A voice erupts over an intercom. "All personnel, please report to your designated secure zone. This is a Code 57. I repeat, Code 57. This is not a drill." The guards' boots charging past the storage door sound like beating drums of war. Rod and Eric keep their eyes locked on each other while listening. When the pounding footsteps subside, Rod slowly opens the door. No sign of anyone. The men leave the storage room, running in the opposite direction of the charging guards. They turn the first corner and sprint down the hall, turning left as they near the end. Several cries of terror erupt from behind. Eric looks back as a group of orderlies bust through another stairwell door. Mad howls echo throughout the halls as deranged inmates pour out of the door after the orderlies. The men try to fight back the onslaught but are quickly overpowered. Male orderlies cry out as the inmates impale them with makeshift knives and spears. Deep crimson spurts across the white walls. One of the inmates feverishly disembowels a male orderly, flinging his guts across the hall. "Do unto others, like Mother said, do unto others," the inmate chants, bathing in the orderly's innards. The female orderlies fight to break away from the slaughter but are tackled to the ground. The inmates rip clothing from flesh and delve into their most basic of instincts. The orgy of rape and mutilation starts as Rod and Eric continue in the opposite direction. Another group of guards enters from a door on the opposite end. They charge the inmates with their riot shields up and batons at their hips. Sounds of guards cursing and screaming bellow out behind Eric. He fights the urge to look back at the mayhem. "Just keep running, Eric. Just keep running," Eric chants in his mind as they reach a set of double doors. "Come on, kid," Rod demands. "The quicker we find Armistead, the quicker we get out of here." Rod and Eric bust through the door and pass through an intersecting hallway. More inmates pour in through a set of elevators and an adjacent door down the right hallway. More screams, followed by maniacal laughs, spread throughout the level. Rod quickly scans each direction. He points ahead. "This way, come on." Eric follows closely behind his partner. The floor shakes beneath the two men as they pass a set of doors. "Damn, feels like a bomb just went off," Eric exclaims, losing his footing for a moment. "They sure do know how to create a diversion, I'll give them that," Rod replies. "Hopefully they don't confuse us for the work staff." "If they do, they won't live long enough to regret their decision. Come on, I think we're almost there." "How do you know that?" Eric asks with doubt. Rod looks back at his new friend. "Just a hunch." And that feeling has a name, or at least he's given it a name. Rod doesn't know exactly when the Dark One appeared. It seems like ages since his thoughts were his own. Like a parent who knows all your thoughts, sometimes before you can even fathom the thought yourself. The malevolent growl of the Dark One crawls to the front of Rod's mind. "He's close. The next corner. Make it quick, I'm tired of this place. Too drab for my taste." Just then, voices echo down the hall. It sounds as though people are heading in the men's direction. "Dr. Armistead, we need to get you to a secure area," demands one of the voices. "Told you," replies the Dark One condescendingly. Rod reaches the corner of the hallway and peers out. He detects 3 armored guards next to an older, well-kept gentleman. Looking back at Eric, and grins. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've found our target." Eric stares blankly at Rod, not sure what to say. He whispers, "Stay put and out of sight." Eric gives a slight nod. With a cool demeanor, Rod rounds the corner as the guards, with Dr. Armistead, come walking in his direction. Before the guards assess the situation, Rod breaks out into a mad dash toward them. Side by side, two of the guards make a human wall, each sentry pulling a baton from their side. With a flick of their wrists, the batons emit a blue hue. From Rod's right, the guard swings at a downward angle. Rod pulls left as the baton flies past. He grabs the guard's baton wrist with his right hand and snaps the elbow with his left. Rod snatches the falling baton, then thrusts it into the left guard's face. Sparks fly as the blue current wraps around his head. He cries out in agony. The guard's hair catches fire. His body convulses as the flame chars his face black. Burnt hair and skin clog the hallway. The guard with the broken elbow tries to stand up, but Rod swings around to his back, snapping the guard's neck. Dr. Armistead looks back for assistance from the other guard, but he is no longer there. Turning forward again, Dr. Armistead stares directly at the blue-eyed devil. With a wide smile and eyes locked with the doctor's, Rod speaks. "Hello, Doctor. I'm here on behalf of Talun Balazar. A blood debt needs to be paid." The doctor stutters. "What blood debt?" The knife that was sleeping in Rod's pocket is now embedded in the doctor's neck, feasting for the debt that is to be paid. "This one," Rod responds with a sneering tone as he yanks the blade from the doctor's neck. Blood spurts out of the wound as Dr. Armistead falls to the floor. Rod retrieves the vial from his pants pocket. He twists it open into two halves, filling it with Armistead's blood. Once full, he screws the halves back together and places it into his pocket. Rod stands, turning to his partner. Eric, without realizing it, stepped out during Rod's fight with the guards and was in complete awe at the way he moved effortlessly, like it was a choreographed fight. Before he knew it, Eric was mere feet from Rod. He looks on as Rod collects the blood debt. Rod harshly says, "I thought I told you to stay out of sight," but receives only a blank stare in return. "No time to dawdle," Rod demands as he smacks the trance from Eric's eyes, causing him to blink several times. "Better now?" Rod asks. "Yeah, I think so, thanks," Eric says, rubbing the red mark on his cheek. "We can get out." As soon as the words leave Rod's mouth, an explosion erupts from across the hall. The shockwave knocks him off his feet, thrusting him violently into Eric, which in turn knocks Eric off his feet. They both launch backwards several yards before hitting the floor. Eric is lying on his back, looking up dumbfounded by what just occurred. The explosion created a massive hole at the end of the hallway. Black smoke pours out of the newly created exit. Still trying to reclaim equilibrium, Rod helps Eric to his feet. He chuckles for a moment and slaps the dazed companion on his back. "Looks like our way out was made for us." "I'm ready for this day to be over," Eric grimaces while popping the knots in his spine. "It's almost over," Rod replies, jogging to the black hole. "One more hurdle to go." As they reach the hole, a cool breeze hits each man's face. They stop, letting the fresh air wash over them and push away the reek of death for a moment. Closing his eyes, Rod takes one more deep breath before exhaling. His eyes open and survey the surroundings through the scorched wall. He points to a small metal roof to their right. "If we take a running head start, we can make it to the lower roof." Eric looks over Rod's shoulder. "I don't know, that's a long way." "After everything we've already been through, you have doubts now?" Rod asks sarcastically, backing away from the opening. "We only have one life. Don't you want to live it out there?" He doesn't wait for Eric to answer and sprints toward the hole. He pushes off at the very last second, vaulting forward to the small hole. Rod plants his feet and rolls forward to relieve the excess shock from the impact. Getting to his feet, Rod turns to Eric. "Come on, kid. Don't think. Just do it." "Easy for you to say," Eric yells out to Rod. "I'm not built like a fighter at the Colosseum," muttering the last bit to himself. Eric takes a couple steps back, breathes in deep, and shakes his head as he exhales. Running a hand through his blonde hair, the thief removes all impediments to his sight. One more deep breath, and Eric takes off. Hitting the ledge, Eric pushes off, leaping into the air. His companion looks on, mentally surveying the distance as Eric plummets back to the earth. Shit, he's not going to make it. Eric keeps his right hand extended out as he falls past the roof. Rod leaps forward, reaching for the thief's hand, luckily snagging it at the very last possible second. The momentum swings Eric into the side of the building. He cries out as the force of impact bounces him off the wall. "You okay?" Rod asks. All Eric can do is moan as he gives a thumbs up with his left hand. "You're starting to slip. I'm going to have to let you go from here." "No, that's too far of a drop," Eric demands. He tries with all his might to climb up the wall, but his boots keep slipping. Rod strains to keep a tight grip on Eric's hand. "Just roll forward on impact. You'll be fine. On 3. Rod grunts. "Wait, I'm not ready," Eric pleads. 1. "Just pull me up. Come on, look at those muscles. This should be nothing for you." 2. "Damn it, I'm not." 3. Rod lets go. As Eric falls, he forgets the advice from his partner and slams, back first, into the cracked cement. He lays there in a complete stupor, pain shooting in all directions throughout his body. Eric looks skyward, trying to wiggle his toes. Check. He now tries to wiggle his fingers. Check. Rod's smiling face comes into view. He lets out a good laugh. "You're going to be able to walk?" "No," Eric answers with a frown. Rod smirks and extends a hand. "Come on, kid. You should have listened." "I'm sorry, I got scared falling to my death. It happens when you're under stress." Eric slowly gets to his feet. "See?" Rod says with a sly smile. "You lived. Let's go." Eric stands there motionless in the empty parking lot of the barren asylum. So many thoughts and emotions rush over him. The emotions of hopelessness and fear for spending the rest of his life behind bars vanish instantly. Now a soothing warmth of freedom and hope fills his soul to the point of tears. Eric fights the urge, telling himself, "Now isn't the time." His cohort calls out. Eric turns to see Rod climbing into the very van that brought him here. He runs over to the passenger side and jumps in. As Eric shuts the door, he spies figures moving out of the sanitarium and into the barren world. It's the hag, ushering tortured prisoners. Although missing her eyes, he could feel the withered woman staring at them, at which point she gives a slight wave, then vanishes into the forsaken world. Eric turns back to Rod and asks the question that should have been asked at the beginning of this prison break. "What's your name?" Without taking his eyes off the road and speeding through the open gate, he answers, "Rod Calloway."